As a person who's suffering from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is like your brain's browser having 50 odd tabs open, wanting attention all at once, I was drawn to design from very early on. This was because of the sheer flexibility in the outlet for creativity design offered. While pursuing design in my higher studies, I remember getting an assignment of mine torn to shreds for not being at par with the expected standards, which is true for any design student's rite of passage. As a somewhat direct response to that incident, I developed an inner critic which would set high standards of perfection, possibly so that I wouldn't have to face rejection like that ever again. Perfectionism became a mechanism to compensate, but was merely a veil to hide the imposter within. If self-doubt had a toxic Indian parent, it would be known as the imposter syndrome, as it is always nagging you for never being good enough, instilling a fear in you that failure is not an option, and pushing you to strive for unachievable perfection. It makes you forget whatever good you've achieved in the past because look at what Sharmaji's beta has done today. This is precisely why I feel imposter syndrome is especially sinister in the creative fields, as there's no objective sense of a perfect design, Helvetica side, and where creativity is as subjective as the idea of pineapples on pizza. Now, as a practicing designer, the most frustrated individuals I meet are creative people who've not allowed themselves to create. It's because the imposter in them has sown in the very seeds of self-doubt, making them suffer because of it. It takes away our ability of enjoying our process. It destroys our very ability of self-expression because it makes us believe that in order to be taken seriously, our work needs to be pixel perfect. It needs to be validated by others and without any criticism. At the beginning of a design process, we very often use online platforms for inspiration and ideation. However, an imposter's toxic trait quickly has us using that as a mechanism to compare ourselves unfairly against somebody else's definition of success. Consequently, the modern design landscape is rife with triggers that feed into our very insecurities and fears. A few years ago, I remember I was privileged enough to be part of a summer design workshop in the southern France. I was surrounded by artists, architects, and designers from across the globe. But I distinctly remember feeling like the black sheep amongst the bunch, merely disguising myself as the contemporary equal, always second guessing my very place in the crowd at every instance. The imposter in me had made me hesitant to ask questions on things I was genuinely curious about. I withdrew from active participation and even refrained from sharing my work with others, fearing as they may expose me as the comic sans of the community. You see, I mistook their flawless execution of skill and effortless use of medium as a cultural barrier that I could not cross or a God-given talent that I did not possess. A particularly embarrassing moment I remember in great detail is asking Pablo, a designer my age, how he was able to charge so much for his designs. Because you see, my very humbling impostor had drafted my rate cards. It became evident that the true barrier to my growth, learning, and frankly even bank balance at this point was this fraud-like feeling within. Ironically, the more time I spent there interacting, the clearer it got that the imposture, which I thought was part of my unique, troubled and edgy personality, was not a feeling uncommon to others. These gurus whom I had worshipped as faultless turned out to be rather guides and friends who willingly shared their lengthy journey of learning, of being an amateur, and refreshingly of their struggles with self-doubt. A reputed study by American psychologist Gail Matthews suggested a number as high as 70% of successful people experiencing imposter-like feelings during some point of their lives, which I still take as a silver lining example for myself posted in my room. Now, back in India, I got a call from a friend asking if I'd been interested in making NFTs for a Bollywood movie with an A-lister in it, having Big B in his name. Naturally, with impeccable timing, my imposter returned. And for the right reasons this time. I had no ideas on how to make NFTs, not that it's relevant anymore. I was way in over my head for a project this size, and I only considered it because my friend insisted on me being the right fit, and frankly, I was just too embarrassed to say no. It was made crystal clear to me by my imposture that I was set to fail. So, without nothing to lose except perhaps the respect of the said friend, I made the first draft without thinking much of it. I even had a little bit of fun along the process and sent it without thinking. To my absolute disbelief, the team loved the draft and commissioned me for not one but the entire 50 NFTs for the project. My imposter having a hard time feeling clueless, I let out a big nervous laugh as my friend said nothing except I told you so. in hindsight, my groundbreaking approach to this entire ordeal that helped me deliver the entire NFTs was how you'd save any dying relationship. That is to spice things up with role play. Instead of feeling like I was merely pretending to be a good designer, for the sake of my friend's delusion, I decided to be good at just the pretending part for the moment. This simple change in perspective helped me find newfound confidence that helped me stay grounded and focus on the task at hand. Mind you, feeling confident didn't mean that I had eliminated all self-doubt. Rather, it had made me act confident despite the uncertainties. Through this role play, or as my therapist likes to call it, unblending, I was able to externalize the imposter from myself. My imposter had previously made me so output focused that I had forgotten to enjoy the creative journey. I started to appreciate the importance of process and progress over perfection. The feeling that would make me freeze and often procrastinate first now became something stimulating. As a reminder to myself and to all of you, I emphasize that it's the very mistakes our imposter wants us to avoid that leads to discoveries, and the very play we're so afraid to indulge in that leads to passionate, exciting work. It might seem unnatural at first, but if we create a design that is outside some standard norms or might not appeal to others, is perfectly fine. And the feeling when the client is not appreciating the design is in no way an indication of your capability and competence. We need to remember why we're doing what we're doing in the first place. And that is for the absolute joy of creating, of problem solving, of making something new, of drafting a new experience. If we see our mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than reasons for shame, we can flip the script on our imposter with a well-timed Uno reverse. Friends who volunteer I told you so's are also to be protected, as it is individuals like them who help us build a culture and community where every artist feels confident, capable, and authentically themselves. My non-toxic mother said this, and I quote, "Having the right mindset is half the battle won. Therefore, to separate and manage the imposter, we first need to acknowledge it, and then cultivate our cycle of positivity, designing confidence." We can simply do this by acting as if we believe in something, which may pave the way to truly believing it and thus achieving it. Thank you so much.